Hello. Woo. Thank you all so much for coming to Riot's Cosplay Connoisseur panel. Today we've got these beautiful cosplayers up here that are going to talk to us all about their experiences in cosplays, give us their tips for their art, and also share their opinions on some current topics in the cosplay world. If any of you came to last year's cosplay panel, you'll see that there's a few familiar faces, but we've also got some fresh faces on this year. So I think a great way to start off this panel would be to go down the line and have everyone introduce themselves.
So I'm Eliza, or Alicia Cosplay. I come from little old Adelaide. I always say that I'm going to make non-League of Legends cosplays, and then there's always new skins, and then all of a sudden I'm always doing League cosplays. Relatable.
I'm Zaf. I'm from Brisbane. I do a lot of LOL cosplay as well. I've been around in the scene for probably a bit longer than I'm ashamed to admit. And I like making props more so than the costumes, but yeah, it's good fun.
I'm Nikki, or Riot Akana. As well as being a cosplayer, I run Riot's cosplay programs, so things like our contests and videos.
Hi, I'm Randy, also known as New Rain Cosplay. I'm from Brisbane and I do a lot of armoured costumes usually.
Would you care to introduce the person next to you as well?
Hi, so my name's Swain, everyone. It's Swain. Sorry, I have bad impression.
It was good. My name's Laura, also known as Sarian online. If any of you watched the OPL, I did a few player interviews towards the end of the last split, but before that I used to be deep in cosplay, but life has kind of got in the way, as I'm sure a lot of you relate to. But what I'd like to know is how all of you got into cosplay and where you started, because I feel like everyone's got their own separate and unique journey, so I don't know who'd like to start.
I'll joke it. So my first cosplay experience was, I think, 3 years ago at Supernova in Adelaide, and it was Joanna, her original skin, and I loved it on the day. Looking back at it now, there are a few things I would probably change about it. Probably the number one thing is I used pins to attach some of the parts to my body because I made it all and then didn't think of how to actually attach it. So yeah, just from there, it's particularly, again, League of Legends, there's always new skins that are great inspiration, and just friend-wise, I had so many friends that got me into it. So it just kind of, it's like a little snowball at the top of the mountain, and it's just slowly started taking over my life as it's rolled down the mountain.
For me, I'm the one on the far left there. I come from a time when cosplay was party satin, and there was no such thing as Warbler or...
There's no armour.
There was no armour. No one did armour. That was a thing. I've been around in the scene for a very long time, and that's my first costume back in high school was Cardcaptor Sakura, and I got up on stage and I sung a cappella, the theme song, because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. So that was an interesting start, and then I stopped doing skits. The feedback I got was like, don't, Zach. And I was like, sure, good, noted, I will just make things instead. But it's been really cool seeing how the scene has evolved over this time. But yeah, I started with party satin and toothpicks and foam core, and yep, it's good. Good times.
I'm a bit like Saf in that I am old cosplayer, let's just go with that. My actual first photos can't be found anymore because they were physical film photos, not digital. But for me, I've kept cosplaying because I kind of keep loving that challenge of finding a new design, figuring out how to make it work, and the more time that I spend with these guys, the more complicated I make things for myself, and you know, it's cool. This community is amazing, so it kind of keeps me around.
Okay, so I first started cosplaying back in high school. So I'm that Toby thing from Naruto. So I initially started cosplaying with my friends, and then now I cosplay to ultimately expand my life skills and challenge myself every day. Yeah.
I know, Nikki, you were just talking about how you like to figure out how you're going to make the costume. Do you find that you look at a design and you try to interpret the essence of the cosplay, or do you try and build it like as you see it and get all the details?
It's funny you should ask that. So I tend towards accuracy for the most part, but as soon as I can't find a detail to implement, I usually figure out a way to add one. So there are a lot of things, for example, if you're looking like a game texture, there'll be like a lot of flat panels of color and things like that. Not that anyone can see, but my Syndra shoes actually have exactly that. And so I've added a bunch of embellishments so that extra panel of color makes sense. because otherwise, as a model, looks totally great. As actual shoes, just kind of looked like I stuck spandex on top of a shoe. So that's kind of where I tend to interpret.
I find that more simple designs, cosplayers tend to build on it and get creative in different ways. Zafi, I know you use a lot of different materials and fabrics, so you could probably add on to this.
So for the longest time, accuracy was my main goal, but more recently I've got a whole bunch of tools at my disposal. Like I've recently picked up an embroidery machine, so for Divine Soraka I went, it's a beautiful design, it's a little plain, let's put some pretty sparkly embroidery on it just to kind of beef up the character design bit for me. So I don't really have a preference between accuracy or interpreting the design. I don't think there's anything wrong with one or the other. But yeah, it's a bit of a, if you can fit in a few more textures, a few more details, it's always a little bit more fun to kind of bring that character from that world with things that they might have, like make it more than just the 3D model. So if there's a character that would be like a rich queen, or you'd have like luscious fabrics or brocades, it's not damaging the image of the character, I think, if you're just sort of making it real.
And I think it kind of also comes into it is what the particular costume is for. Like I'm kind of the same, where I was always so caught up in, oh, it has to be exactly like the character looks in either the show or the game. But now, if it's not either for competition or for something particular that I'm doing, I will sometimes, for comfort, make little alterations and things. Even like Rakan that I've made that I'll actually be wearing tomorrow, with that I took inspiration. It's still technically accurate to what it is, but I took, instead of from his splash art, I took details from his cinematic piece on the gauntlets, just because it had a lot more detail with having lots of layers of feathers rather than just the gold bracer with the 3 little ones. So it was still falling into accuracy, but it was just kind of across different media forms, and it was what I preferred. And I mean, if you're wearing a costume, you want to make sure you like how you're looking and you like the finished result. So yeah, it can definitely comfort though. Sometimes I'll just take that high heel off and they're flats.
Talking about accuracy and also the fact that we all want to be comfortable when we're in cosplay, Randy, how did you go about balancing these different things when making Swain?
Okay, interesting topic. So ultimately I do aim for accuracy, but so Swain would be my most, it's a costume which I have 4 elements from various splash arts, because Swain has gone through so many splash arts and so many in-game models. And this is a combination of everything. That's why Beatrice is a bit fat. Yeah, she's like fat in like the original Splash and the original in game, and then now she's like the slim crow. And I was like, I like her with a bit of booty.
I think it's worth calling out too that, you know, you probably could have gotten away with a Swain with like some makeup to make fake wrinkles, and you went with the, oh, I'll just silicone cast an entire head option. So this
it makes it easier. I don't like makeup. Everyone has their forte. So,
Don't have to worry about it sweating off, right?
Yeah, that's my main topic. I've done full makeup in the past, and it's not fun.
Even just looking down the panel, you can see that like there's a wide variety of materials that everyone's used, and I find that cosplayers tend to specialize in different areas of cosplay. Like Zafi, you were talking about that you like making props, maybe more so than the costumes themselves. So maybe you'd like to start on what materials you enjoy using in cosplay.
So I've recently started exploring thermoplastics other than just Warbler, which is the big buzzword that, I've recently started picking up more different plastics, and I 3D print because I like getting different results. And I've recently discovered a material called Sintra, or PVC foam board, which is the most amazing thing since sliced bread. And I'm spruiking it wherever I go. You can cut it and carve it, and it's beautiful. When I started cosplay, you couldn't get a hold of any of these materials. So now I'm really excited whenever a new thing comes out. I'm like, I need to get my hands on that and try it. And we're getting more and more suppliers in Australia that are really good for helping us. Like you can go down to Spotlight and get foam, you can get fabric and Super 77, which is the glue up there. Or you can hit up any of the great suppliers that have sprung up because they've seen that there's a market for cosplay, and cosplayers are hungry for new materials to use. And it's so good that we're now getting access to them, because everyone in the States are just like, oh, just go down to Home Depot and I'll pick up all of these things. And you're like, I will wait for 3 weeks on shipping and maybe it will arrive.
You pay double the price.
Yes, you pay double the price, yeah. So
I think it's really great seeing every time that a new material does come out, seeing that immediate level up in the community.
Yep.
I know for me the big one at the moment is the Yaya Han fabrics that Spotlight has just released, which are designed for cool cosplay outfits, like, full body suits, things like that. And I can't wait to see what everyone's going to do with those now they are actually available, because the second anything becomes available, you watch the entire community just kind of grab them and everything elevates. It's so cool watching how that kind of works.
What about you, Randy? Have you been using prosthetics and stuff for long, or is it something new that you've delved into that you're exploring?
So with prosthetics, I delved into it when I brought WooCon to the Cosplay Lab in LA. So it was something that I didn't think I would ever touch, but here I am with a creepy silicon cast of a beautiful man. Yeah, and I get my supplies from Barnes, which is great for molding and casting. Yeah, which is on the list. Yeah. Have you realised that?
Well, I think like Zaf was saying, now that we're starting to get a lot more choices, it kind of makes it easier. And also, I work full time. Like, cosplay, unfortunately, is not a full time job for me. So you kind of now have that choice as well with different quality of fabrics. Sometimes if I'm pushed for time, I'll just save up and spend a little bit more on a material that's easier to work with. I don't have to prime as much. I love foam because it's cheap, it's easily accessible, and it is easy to work with, but it does take time to get a beautiful mirror finish on a piece of foam. So we do now, I'm trying to get more into sewing because that's just it's a hard world for me, the sewing world, particularly when you have non-stretch fabrics that are supposed to conform perfectly to the human form. But yeah, the world is our oyster now. We have so many things that it may take a million years comparative to other places in the world, but we can actually get them in Australia now. But definitely, Warbler will always have a special place in my heart, but I have kind of moved away from it a little bit into foam because a little bit cheaper.
We all know that cosplay can be really expensive. So how do you go against balancing what areas of your costume you might spend that bit of extra dosh on to stand out, and what bits you might sacrifice to save a bit of money in your wallet?
Yeah, for me, I prefer making props, so I'll cheap out a little bit on fabrics, but I will try and push for the materials for prop making that I find will give me the nicest surface, even if it will take more time for me to get that finish. And then I go, oh god, I need a costume to wear with this. I'll just run down a Spotlight and just buy whatever appropriate fabrics that I can find on hand, and that's the sort of sacrifice I make. So I'm like, I'll buy the cheap fabrics and hope no one just notices that. And they just look at the nice shiny big staff next to me or swords, and so I find, what you're better at, you can sort of put more into.
It is a trap, like you're saying, with what's on hand when you go to a fabric store. It is a trap that I've fallen into where I've just been, I love feeling the textures of fabrics, because sometimes, particularly if you see like a rendered model, you just have in your head what it should feel like or how the stiffness or texture should be. And I'll just be going around looking at different colours and feeling the textures, like, oh, this is perfect. Oh, it's also $35 a metre and I have to make a full hoop skirt. Do I need to eat? Oh, okay, no, I should put it back and get something else.
Randy, did you have to make any sacrifices with your costume?
Prosthetics are bloody expensive, I'll just say that. And Swain's had actually screwed up twice, I think, and me and Rachel had to go through a bunch of materials just to get it right. I mean, I can make 100 of them now, I guess, if anyone wants a sway mask.
We're selling sway masks, apparently.
That was the point of the panel.
Just promo.
But no, so I would say I would spend a lot more on resins and molding materials over. Foam is cheap for me. Foam is just another essential. And the fabric, I usually go for more luxe fabric, so I usually go for upholstery fabric. It gives more dimension. Just look at the shine.
A topic that I find is kind of controversial in the cosplay world, particularly more so online than at conventions, is if buying a costume is still cosplaying. I guess this also comes into effect at cosplay competitions. Cosplay conventions usually have rules where if you buy a costume, you can't enter certain, I guess, categories of those conventions, but I'd like to hear your opinions on if you think that buying a costume is still cosplaying.
In that regard, so I do agree it's still cosplaying. It depends on, so ultimately I like making everything from scratch, but there's still a lot of things I won't make from scratch, like pants and undershirts. Like I don't have time to make a pair of jeans. Yeah, so it is still, yeah, it's still technically buying. It depends on, I think, how you enjoy yourself in the costume ultimately.
I think, like you're saying, with particularly online being kind of where the taboo lies, I think definitely buying a costume is still cosplaying, because cosplay is literally costume play. But I think honesty has become a big thing, where people either commission pieces or buy full costumes, and they won't necessarily explicitly say they made it themselves, but they won't allude to the fact that it's bought. And that's not always a problem, but if people are kind of marketing themselves for their skills and they're not letting their audience know that they haven't actually constructed something, particularly if another cosplayer they've commissioned something from and they're not crediting it, it's still cosplay, but I think that's kind of with bought costumes where that kind of moral line comes into it. And competitions, of course, as well. If you buy something and pretend that you've made it, it's just a really dishonest way of enjoying this fantastic hobby, which should just be about the fun side, not about the look at me, I'm wonderful, but I didn't actually make it myself.
There's nothing wrong with not making your own costume. Like, the cost of living is actually quite high, and there's nothing shameful about not being able to decide between, do I make a costume, do I buy one, do I eat? And there's usually a few things that are on that list of priorities. So if you're buying a costume, don't feel bad about it. Have fun, wear the costume. Don't get caught up in the negativity, because it's still cosplay. Like it only really becomes a thing when you're in craftsmanship competitions where you have to be, this is how I did it, here's the technical specs, here's the costume that I made. But no one is ever gonna, like, no one should bring you down for buying a costume.
Time, the investment that goes into making it. If you just want to enjoy yourself at a convention, I got up at 5 o'clock this morning to put some finishing touches on, and if you don't want to have to go through that, just buy it and have fun.
I think you're absolutely right. I think ultimately it's the honesty piece. I know, kind of taking a different perspective of it from as someone who runs contests, I actually, like, I'm so excited anytime I see basically any cosplay anywhere, ever. But for me, if I'm running a contest, ultimately what I'm looking for is someone who's, you know, who has invested that insane amount of time and passion, and it's an effort to reward that. So for me, that's the only time when I do get a little bit antsy, I guess, about people buying versus making, and even then it's a very fine line, because, you know, if you make one pauldron for suit of armor yourself, but then your friend helps you send the other one, did they make the costume? Did you make the costume? It's so hard to quantify that sort of thing. I think you're absolutely right. It's ultimately just about being honest and saying, you know, I had some help from friends, or, you know, I totally bought this wig because I don't make wigs. You know, I think there are probably 2 cosplayers on the entire convention floor today who are like, yeah, I made this wig from scratch. You know, there are some things that are always fundamentally going to be a purchase.
I think it's these like honesty issues where people do get caught out entering a competition where they have bought a costume. Those things kind of blow up, and I think that they may deter people that do want to cosplay but want to buy a costume, and they're kind of like, oh, am I going to be looked down upon because of it? But I think we all agree that it's 100% still cosplaying, and if you want to do it and just go out and have a good time, then you should definitely be allowed to.
Live your dreams, dress up and be weird.
Surely enough.
So, Zafu, I might start with you on this, because with cosplay you can also enter competitions, just like we were talking about. And in Australia and internationally, there's obviously different levels of competition that you can enter in cosplay. For example, Riot's one that you guys all took part in. Anyone of any skill level can enter and go for it. But then there's also competitions like the Oz Comic Con Australian Championships of Cosplay, the Madman's national competition they run, the World Cosplay Summit, where you have to dedicate your life practically to those cosplay competitions, and you've entered the OzComicCon one, so would you like to share your experience with it?
I tried to enter the OzComicCon Championships, but I was defeated by the costume that I was building, and my body, and the need to sleep. So I found the challenges that came with that project for me was being able to balance the level of work that I thought needed to go into a competitive level costume, while also having a full-time job, while also needing at least 3-4 hours sleep at night, and also doing things on the side to remain sort of human. So I find the biggest challenges that I suffer from are time management, just because there's a whole lot of things going on, and this can consume your life. Like Madman Nationals is a big thing. WCS is a competition with 2 people, so it's you and another person who have to manage their schedules and try and get everything together, and it's very stressful. I've seen friendships end over cosplay competitions, and that's really sad, because we're all just nerds in cosplay. Like, it shouldn't get to that point, but it really can when there becomes that idea of, oh, there's this prize, there's this glory. But it shouldn't. You should just be all celebrating, making cool stuff. And it's exciting to win, but it's not the end of the world,
And some of these competitions are really full on. You have to document the entire process and take photos, and sometimes these documents can be like 70 pages long that you have to submit.
25-page document for the costume that I didn't finish to enter in the competition. It was just to show all of the techniques, all of the details, just because I don't want them to miss anything, because I have poured my life for the last year into this, and yeah, still didn't get it.
But then
Next con.
we have competitions like the Riot one. Randy and Ali, how did you find it entering in this competition?
I think with something like the Riot competition, it's much easier. I think it can be quite daunting entering a competition in the first place. That is one of the big challenges, particularly like we were touching on with materials. There's so many more things that are available now, and you can kind of, I still view myself as quite new to cosplay, just because skill-wise, I didn't come into cosplay with any skills. I kind of learned everything from YouTube and failure. But looking at how other people have made their costumes and kind of feeling inferior almost, thinking, oh, I can't match that. They've got these moving parts and lights. But something like the Riot cosplay comp, I love League of Legends, so it was really easy for me to stay motivated to make a costume of a character that I just really love his design. I make a female version of Rakan, just to add that. But I love his design, I love his personality, I love the game. There's some really awesome music Riot put out, so you can just crank that in the background and just keep yourself going. But I think finding a character you're really passionate about helps balance out some of the challenges, because if you're making something because you think it's competition worthy, or because you think it'll push you or it'll stand out against other people's, but you don't really like the character that much, or not enough that you're kind of in love with the design of the character, I think that can make it really hard to stay on target. You can get distracted by other things that are kind of taking your interest more. So Riot was like a perfect competition for me to enter. I don't enter a lot of competitions, but this one, just thought, yeah, love Rakan. I entered with a friend, and the friendship didn't end, which was good as well. She was my sire. So that helps too. If you can find a friend that is motivated along with you and to keep going with someone, and you know it's not going to cause massive conflict, that's a good way to help with challenges where you keep each other motivated. You message each other, have you made your skulls yet for your cape? Get on that.
So the most challenging thing that comes with competitive cosplay for me is commitment. So many people on this panel know I love starting ideas like, oh yeah, I'm going to finish Bard. And how long has that been? 2 years now? So I think it's just it's just the whole planning and scheduling things about your life, and then a lot of techniques. I think it's a journey ultimately. So yeah, I think it's just it's really hard to say, but I think it's just all about sizing myself up. That's the biggest challenge, because I need to know where I am at in a competitive level against amongst many other amazing cosplayers, and then I need to ultimately work out if I can execute this well, because Swain was something that took ages to work out, because even though he looks quite simple with, a few armor, fabric, prosthetic, bird,
Just aesthetic. Easy.
robe. No, it's just, I worked with techniques which I was comfortable with, and I knew what I could, do with it. But bard's this giant, jiggly, bouncing thing, and I can't work it out. And I've discussed it with many people on this panel, and none of us can. So it's all about eventually working things out. So commitment and sizing yourself up.
The thing I love about the Riot Cosplay competition is the fact that you enter through photos that you upload, and it removes the whole stage that at normal cosplay competitions you usually go up on a stage in front of a big crowd, and it can be really daunting if you're afraid of crowds. So I feel like the Riot competition is a really friendly and welcoming competition for cosplayers, but anyone to enter. And Nikki, I think it'd be great to get your perspective as someone who organises it and maybe the challenges that you faced.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time since I've competed myself. In fact, the last time I competed was Supernova 2008. Yeah, which was with my friend here. We were a Sailor Moon group. We won Best Group. It's the only time we ever competed. We were all right.
100%. Win rate.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm actually the ultimate champion. One thing that I kind of saw from that was, that day was absolute agony. By the time we were done, we couldn't eat. We had wire literally embedded in our skulls. It was not a good day. And it worked well, but it was, it was just such a painful experience. And ultimately, 99% of the people in that contest went home disappointed. And that sucks. And it's kind of the nature of the beast. But for me, especially because we have, we represent quite a large region, there are cosplayers in New Zealand who are amazing, but who might never get the chance to come and compete on a stage in Sydney or Melbourne. So that kind of, that method of creating that intro to a contest through photo, for me, is really about kind of really reducing that barrier to entry and going, you know what, it doesn't matter where you are, you can live in the back of absolute nowhere. And if you're making cool stuff, you should be recognized for that.
Now, if we're being honest, we as cosplayers put ourselves through a lot, both on the convention day, but also weeks and months and potentially years, depending how long you've been working on a costume beforehand. So what's the hardest thing individually that you found that comes along with cosplay? I don't know, Ali, you might want to start.
I think every new costume has its own kind of little difficulties, but I think one of the biggest recently has actually been within the community itself. Sometimes we can be very critical of ourselves and others. Last year there was the Yaya Han fabrics. There was a huge uproar about people saying she's monetizing this fantastic hobby, and then the other half was saying, but no, these are fabrics for us. They're a bit more expensive, but they do what we need. And sometimes internal conflicts can be one of the hardest things to deal with. And particularly as soon as it comes into things like other job opportunities or anything that's involving money, can be a very difficult road to tread sometimes, because so many of us can't live off cosplay. Like I said earlier, I work full time, but sometimes I get paid opportunities, and so of course I jump at it because it means that it covers a portion of the money that I put into the costume, because it never balances out quite exactly. But that can be just sometimes feeling like you're under the microscope personally, even though there might be something going on in the community that's not directly to do with you. If you find it relatable to something that you're working on, or something that involves a friend, that can kind of just be a difficult part of cosplay. But I'm in a very, very good group of friends in Adelaide that all cosplay. We don't have drama within our own group, so we kind of stick to ourselves. So that's kind of a good way to balance that out, is just having a really good corporate group that you can talk to. So if there's something happening and you feel uncomfortable about something, you can talk amongst yourselves and you can either determine what to do from this point, or realise it's not really a big deal and you're just making storylines within your own head, which I have done plenty of times.
The hardest thing for me, this is going to get really real for a second, I apologise in advance, but it's dealing with me. I have this voice in the back of my head that goes, Zaf, you're not good enough, you're not going to finish this project, you're not going to succeed, you're going to lose and it's going to be awful and you're going to look terrible. And I have to put that voice out of my head. So for me, the hardest thing is dealing with that little bit of negativity, and the internet I find doesn't help that at times. So as Ali was saying, having a support network of friends who all build things with you is really important for me, because then we can go, does this actually look like what I'm supposed to be making, or have I just spent 12 hours sanding for nothing, or can somebody give me some feedback that I know will be honest and not just it's an awful cosplay that you get like online, or oh, this person did it better, where you just hear the negative side of things. So for me, it's really important to get my psyche and put it in the back burner, so I'm not just dwelling on all the negativity that's around me while I'm making things. So I'm like, yeah, cool, and then I step back and I go, oh, I actually did make something and I'm pleasantly surprised that it turned out okay. Rather than I'm making something and I go, oh, this is awful, why am I doing this? No one's going to appreciate it, I'm not going to appreciate it. So the hardest thing was really just disassociating from that negativity that I found a lot of on some communities online and also just in my head. And I'm sorry that was all really deep, but we all kind of had that thing going on at times, so it happens. Yeah, and you learn to cope, sort of.
I think that support network piece is the big one. I moved to Sydney a couple of years ago to start working at Riot, and actually I left my cosplay community behind when I did that, and I actually haven't really built those local relationships since I moved. And so I harass these guys on a fairly constant basis. Like Monday was a genuine, guys, my wig and my headpiece won't stay on at the same time, I don't know what I'm doing, oh God, fix it, please help me. And that has been my buffer for me, otherwise sitting in my apartment with a wig and a headpiece and staring at them and just kind of continuing to stare at them with no solution and nothing in the future. So I think for me that isolation is a big one. I think you need to get those outside perspectives and network and connect with other cosplayers, because sometimes you just need another set of eyes that aren't in your own head.
The hardest thing for me when cosplaying is self-evaluation and character selection. It's, yeah, as you said, I usually I sit there for days trying to decide on one costume I want to do. Swain took me, how long, Rachel, to decide on?
You went through about 16 different ideas in about 3 days before he's like, I'm making Swain. I'm like, are you making Swain, or is it going to be Jarvan tomorrow?
It was almost Jarvan tomorrow.
It was almost Jarvan tomorrow.
Yeah, so I think it's just me evaluating myself, like, can I ultimately do this? Yeah, it's just trying to juggle up, like, time management also, and whether, yeah, I'm bad at panels, sorry guys, sorry, bear with me. No, I'll just leave it at that.
It's kind of like,
it's a weird topic.
yeah, there's lots of different things, and I think everyone has their own difficulties with cosplay. But kind of going back to what you three were saying about the community, I find that cosplay is really a community centered, and even though we're kind of saying that, you know, you hear bad stuff on the internet, there are lots of positive community groups out there and people that want to support you, and I do think that having those people, friends that are also cosplayers, you get so much inspiration and ideas of them that they really do help invigorate you and make you reach new levels in cosplay. So I think it's a great thing to be involved with cosplay communities. And Randy, I feel like that whole time management thing, it's like that circle where like you have money but you don't have time, or vice versa. So I think it's definitely an individual thing where everyone that cosplays has their own issues that they have to face. But something that's also come up recently, I find, is that we're seeing a lot more cosplayers that are able to transition their hobby into a career that pays for their bills, and people get flown around the world and now get gigs with gaming and movie companies, and it's incredible to see. And Ali, you might be a good person to talk about this with your lux, but how were you able to turn your hobby into something that you were able to get a gig?
I think part of it is definitely right place, right time, putting yourself out there, talking to people in the community. PAX is a fantastic one because I think gaming companies Riot have always been great for it. This photo of my Lux, I was actually very last year. I was for Elementalist Lux. I was the Nature Lux for the Global Cosplay Showcase. And that was me kind of putting myself out there with my costumes. I made Star Guardian Jana last year, and just talking to people and socialising, I got contacted because Nature Lux being kind of the more mature, I guess, kind of out of all the 10 forms, the way that I did Jana kind of struck a chord, and they said, we think that you'd suit it. So definitely, if you want opportunities, be bold with it. Talk to people. I mean, the worst you're going to get is a no for putting yourself forward, and kind of be prepared that it is not something. I didn't just one day wake up and think, oh, I'm going to try and monetize this. It is definitely stepping stones. And now I'm fortunate I do some stuff with Logitech, like I'm here with Logitech for most of the weekend as well. So just keep cracking it, keep improving your skills, but do it for you. Don't do it with the intention of getting paid, because I'm not living off it. I just now get to supplement, and now I can buy new toys. Like I got given an overlocker by my partner because I was getting into cosplay so much, and when I ever get paid work, it usually goes straight back into cosplay. It's not, I don't now have to go, oh, I'm going to go on a holiday. I think, no, now I can buy that $35 a meter fabric that I saw for my costume. Yeah, do it for you. Do push yourself for you, and then kind of opportunities can arise if you open yourself to the opportunity being there.
I think networking is definitely
Yeah.
a big part of it. And Zaffa, you've gotten quite a few jobs with different companies as well.
I'm trying really hard to turn my hobby into a career, and it's taking a big toll on me personally because I work full-time and I'm essentially doing another full-time job making cosplay and selling it. It takes a lot of my free time to just sort of communicate with people, and I'm there making things and I'm losing sleep over it. It's actually a big challenge, and I think being bold is really the best, and networking is really the best way to sort of get yourself out there, because if you just start making stuff and nobody sees it, how are you going to, get that there for them to be seen? I've been really fortunate with a lot of the opportunities that have come to me recently, especially, which have sort of pushed me further into the direction of turning cosplay into a career. But a lot of that was good fortune, right place, right time, and luck, and that's really frustrating because you can't really quantify that into, it's like just, you got to keep working, you've got to keep making things. You can't just expect people to come to you and go, hey, do this, and you go, can I do this? Where's the proof? So it was a lot of time building a portfolio to prove that, hey, if you give me your money, I will make something cool. Please give me your money. So it's a slow process. Like, you're not going to get rich quick overnight. It's going to take a toll on you. It's a lot of work to put forward, and a lot of you goes into that. But it's good if that's what you're passionate about and that's what you want to do. Then go for it. Please don't just go, oh, it's not going to work for you. Then just keep trying. You've just got to keep pushing, and it might take a lot of time, but you will get the opportunities. They will come to you. Just work hard. Try and get some sleep, please.
And in that regard, I do cosplay just as a hobby completely. However, lately I've been just branching out, connecting with people, talking to just people like just me. They, who walked up to me and I'm like, hey, what's up? And we just talk normally. And then later down the path, they're like, oh, we want to commission you. It's a really strange experience for me because I never thought it would go down that path, and every time I'm still surprised it does.
I found also working with like-minded people, you will never be the best at everything. There will be some people that are better at foam or sewing, or there's just not enough time in life to master all of the cool skills that you can use in cosplay. So branching out with other people that you like working with and can build a sort of hub community is really important to, if you're all going to take this seriously, go for it.
Do you like working with me, Zaffi?
I do, until you drop my props that I spent, a month working on and they break, and I'm like, Randy, there's 3 days before we ship, so that's great.
But there's a beautiful paint job on there.
It is. I would forgive you for the paint job.
And my kind of number one tip, just thinking about, like Duff was saying, with all the time and investment we put into costumes, value yourself and value your time. is a big thing as well. Unfortunately, Nikki has been very good in my ear saying you have to value how much time and effort goes into something. If you've spent 50 plus hours on a costume and someone's offering exposure, really weigh up how much that exposure is worth to you, because fortunately a lot of companies are getting on the bandwagon of paying well and realizing the value of having a cosplayer who is passionate about the character they've made. But there are a lot of people who will think, oh, this is the first step, but tread with caution, because it's not always the first step. And don't let yourself be used, because if you've put all this time and effort into a costume, if you think you're worth getting paid, make sure that you're putting that forward. Don't let yourself be taken advantage of, because I see a lot of people that they've put their heart and soul into something, and then someone takes advantage of that with sweet words, but that don't actually amount to anything for them.
I'm very guilty of that.
Yeah,
I feel like my time isn't worth much, but then I go, actually, that was a month of work on one piece, so I probably should get paid for all that time that I spent not going to my day job, where I would get paid.
I feel like when money is involved as well, people put a lot more pressure on themselves. Do you guys have any experience with the pressures you've felt with paid gigs?
Oh, definitely. I think because it isn't an opportunity that is immediately available to everyone, you kind of feel eyes on you, and if I feel personally, if I don't step up my game and make sure I make something that looks good, people will question, say, well, why is she getting paid for that? I could make something way better than her. And it's not necessarily people actually saying that, but in my head, that is immediately what is going through my head. So definitely pressure.
I feel like, sorry, no, you go.
I was just going to say, if I'm making something for somebody else, I feel like it needs to be much better than anything that I can make, which is really funny because, well, that I would make for myself, sorry. Which is funny, so I've got all of these like half-assed props at home for myself, and like all the cool stuff goes to other people. I'm like, I have no good photos or, you know, no good pieces to display for myself, because when there's a paid project coming, I want to deliver the best service that I can, and it's a lot of pushing to sort of get that, because you want those opportunities to come back to you. Like this year at PAX has been so good because there's been heaps of paid cosplayer gigs. So the people are super passionate about what they're dressed up as and why they're there. So it's really good to see that this is becoming more of an accepted thing, that it can sort of be a good way to get cosplayers doing this. Or, yeah.
Aside from networking, it seems that people are also getting a lot of gigs through social media and promoting themselves online through various platforms. Do any of you have any tips for people that might be wanting to try and turn their cosplay hobby into a career through those platforms?
I think the hardest step is actually making a page. I was cosplaying for quite a while before I actually made a page because that is something that, like you're saying, with social networking is a big thing. I didn't have a Twitter account for ages, which is how a lot of artistic people will like keep in touch with things, or you see news about potential paid work or just opportunities, or even like new skins and things like that, and then that can then translate into something. But if you don't have a page, it can be hard to track down. If someone sees your costume and they think, oh wow, that person looks amazing, but then there's kind of no direct leads they can follow, it can be harder to get opportunities arising.
I think the thing I want to call out, and it's kind of connected to the social media piece, but if you're looking to try and create for yourself those paid opportunities, you've kind of got to think of it as though it's already a job. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, if you do have, for example, a Twitter account, maybe think about the fact that when you're reaching out to companies to say, hey, I'd love to be paid for work, or they're doing a search to be like, I need an Overwatch cosplayer for my booth at PAX, for example, make sure that what they're saying makes you look like you are reliable and a professional. Because a lot of the companies creating these creating sounds a little unhumble. A lot of the people that are looking for cosplayers to help them with things are coming from that kind of traditional business environment, and so they're after a professional. And so their particular, you know, like the way that, you know, you communicate and things like that are actually a part of that. And I think one of the things I just wanted to call out, I'm deviating slightly. These guys are all talking about, oh, I was lucky and I'm not even that good. But every single story they show is like, I dropped something and it broke and I had 3 days left and I delivered. And so like they have that record of just actually being able to deliver on a time frame and being able to demonstrate that. So now, you know, if someone works with Safi again, they know that like no matter what happens, they are getting the result they need. And once you get into that kind of paid world, ultimately that's what companies tend to look for. So I think it's just something that's it's useful to kind of keep in mind.
We've got some time left, so we'd love to open the floor up to some... Oh no, there's one left. Brad. What's the craziest thing you've done for cosplay?
Applying a fake beard on me for Graves. See me in the picture? That's me with a fake beard.
Hair by hair.
Hair by hair. It's very dumb. It was in my mouth. A lot of hair in my mouth.
Nikki?
To be honest, I've gotten pretty lucky. I think my big one is probably some of the elements like this, because I have discovered which eye my bad eye is, and it's the one that the eye patch is not covering, so I actually can't tell if this hall is empty. I think it's a lot of those like little physical challenges where you're like, I can't see and I can't walk and there's wire embedded in my head, this is fine.
Oh, jeez.
Too many?
Oh, jeez. Well, the most recent one, I'll go with that. I've been working on Mercy from Overwatch for the last year and a half. And I pushed really hard to get it finished. And then I fell down the stairs and broke 2 ribs. And I went, I'm just going to keep working on Mercy because I've got a deadline coming. That was probably the stupidest thing I've ever done in the name of cosplay. So that was my competition piece. So I pushed and just through this awful pain. And I'm only just healing now. This was about 2 months ago. I should have been much better. But I really made this dumb decision to go for the cosplay, go for this, when I really should have been like, you know, resting my side and, you know, not putting wings on and weighing 15 kilos on my back. Like, it's fine. It only rests on the 2 ribs that were broken. It's absolutely okay. Got to compete. So yeah, the craziest thing I've done on my neck most recently in the name of cosplay is probably that. Yeah. Oh jeez.
I haven't done anything too crazy yet.
Bless you.
Yeah. I say yet. Probably, I did shave my eyebrows off for cosplay because I had white eyebrows and I'm already quite pale, so to get white eyebrows to stand out over my eyebrows, it was the friendly on Talia, so it wasn't the whole eyebrow, it was just like the outer corner. I thought, I'll just shave it off. I don't need this, I don't want to try and conceal it, I'll just shave it off. And probably for this weekend, neither of my costumes and footwear, they don't have heels, because I've got hooves today, and then I'm Ricard tomorrow, and then I'm this again on Sunday, so my calves are probably not going to be very happy with me on Monday.
Cosplay is a good workout at conventions.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good gym workout.
As long as you don't fold it up.
Yeah, it's like until you fall down the stairs. Like.
Okay, round 2. So we've got about 12 minutes left, so if anyone would like to approach either of the microphones and ask one of these cosplayers a question about something we've discussed or something entirely different, then feel free.
Okay, that's a good question.
There we go.
The hall's empty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely empty. We should just leave.
Oh, okay, but don't.
Alright, so with some outfits you either end up exposing a lot of skin or putting a lot of things on. What's the hottest / coldest you've ever been?
Honest. Right here. Honest.
Yeah, I assume that's just a pool of sweat inside.
That was a poor sweat this one. I was going to wear on stage, but I was like, no. Not under these spotlights.
I probably, my first one, Jana, that was the coldest I had been. And it was very windy when we went to do photos. So it was great for Jana, not so great for me as Jana.
Both hot and coldest would have been DJ Sona for me. The bodysuit is a combination of vinyl, so that sticks to you and is hot and gross and sweaty, and then I had these spandex panels that just breathe. So I would be melting and then a cool breeze would come through and I would freeze. I'd be like, what is happening? Only parts of my body would be melting and parts would be freezing. So I'm like, it's the most unpleasant thing to peel that suit off at the end of the day.
And your helmet.
Yeah.
Oh, and the helmet, yeah, the helmet is a little sauna in there, so yeah, no, DJ Sona.
I think mine was definitely Kindred because that was essentially a full fur bodysuit. And I think I wore it for about 2 hours, went to the cosplay change room at PAX, this is 2 years ago, took it off and actually fell over. because I was just so hot and faint from being covered in fur for 2 hours.
That's the same with me actually. I forgot about Wukong.
Oh, yeah.
Wukong's a prosthetic face and a full fur bodysuit. Yeah, it smelled. It still smells up to this day.
Yeah, Kindred went straight in the bin. There was no washing that. It was just.
But it's fur. You can use it.
So, Annie?
I want to ask how Star Guardian Shiraka got her hooves.
So my hooves are actually a pair of high heels, which had the heel angle grinded off by my boyfriend. He did it in our bathroom for some reason instead of outside. That smelled great. And then I moulded out of plasticine the shape of the hoof that I wanted underneath it, cast that then out of resin, and then it has a 2-part epoxy glue that glues it to the bottom of the shoe, and then balance to not fall over so that they look like hooves on my feet.
I was wondering how you go about storing your costumes, especially large armor builds.
Hey guys. So I strictly, in the last year I've gone down to more fabric builds, but in the past I've done full armor builds. I call them tombs. And there's one that's called Nikki's tomb, and Graves is in it, and I just store these tombs in my shed. They're like these massive, I think it's 1.5 meters by half a meter boxes, and they're just massive, and I need to dispose of them soon.
For the record, I don't think he wants to kill me. I don't think it's just empty and waiting. For me, so I've actually, this has been a big one for me because, moved to Sydney for the Riot job, immediately moved into a tiny apartment. And so actually the challenge that I've had this year that I've kind of had to come to the realization of is I don't really rewear costumes. Every year there's something new that I want to do. And I'm always like, oh, I'll go back and I'll fix the things I didn't like with that last year costume. And this year I actually went, you know what, I can't afford to store these anymore. And so the vast majority of my costumes are now in the bin. And that was hard because you're always like, oh, I can fix that one little thing and I'll wear it again. It'll be super awesome. And actually I've just had to come to that realization that for me, that's not what cosplay ends up being. This actually is really small, so I'm really pleased because I can actually probably keep it. But yeah, I've had some big builds and I just can't afford to store them. That kind of sucks, but yeah.
A lot of mine get stored in plastic tubs for eternities, and then I would keep everything. Like I've still got my first props that I made. I'm very lucky space-wise. And then this year, talking to Nikki actually, she's like, I live in a really tiny apartment. I'm like, oh, I'm very, very well off space-wise. And I have all these costumes in crates that I don't ever intend to use again. So I did a big purge as well. So now it's dress-form bags for fabric, and then everything is like vacuum sealed into things, and just plastic tubs for different costumes, just to try and keep everything that I do want to keep in order. And then that heartbreaking feeling when you just throw out something that you've loved and you've worn to death, but you're never going to repair. It's, yeah.
Spend 200 hours on it, wear it for 8 hours, throw it in the bin. Nailed it.
And I kind of fall under that purge category as well. More so because looking back at my previous costumes, I'm really trying to focus on making better quality costumes, but less. So I'm not trying to have a new costume for every day of a convention, but having ones that will last me multiple conventions. So yeah, bin is where a lot of mine have gone. But now I have space unfortunately I have a sewing room, and it does then kind of start trickling out into the wardrobe in my bedroom as well. But yeah, quality costumes, but less of them. So right now I'm good. I will have to see what happens when I fill up my current space.
When I'm building a costume, there's stuff everywhere.
Oh,
Like it's not safe, but storing them, yeah.
Or not storing.
Yeah, not storing.
Thank you. The gentleman over there.
So materials are expensive and mistakes more so. How much effort goes into prototyping and concepting before you make a final piece?
Ooh. I don't save a lot of time for patterning, unfortunately. So it tends to be, which I'm changing now, I'm getting better at it, but a lot of the time it ended up being how can I tweak this to make it work. But there's fortunately a lot more information now, kind of on Google and YouTube, on how to pattern something correctly. So that's saved a lot of trial and error. But I think you start getting used to as well how things should look. Once you've made the same, like gloves, for example, things like that, that you may have made a lot of times before, all that time that you've invested previously then goes into future ones. So I should put more time into it. But yeah, definitely online tutorials help save a lot of time. For basic things, obviously things that Zaf does, I don't do, like all the 3D printing and things like that, that you need programming to do, would probably be a little bit more time invested into it.
For me, it's depending on what the costume's going to be for. If it's going to be a big competition piece, I will have a sketchbook that I carry around with me everywhere, that I've got notes for all the things and pictures of fabric samples. But if it's something that I'm just doing for fun, then I will dive right in. So it really depends on the context of where I'm going to wear that costume and what's its intended purpose, so depending on how much prep goes into it. I'm a trial and error person, so I like to do.
I think as well, over time, I think you kind of find that there are a lot of standard shapes that you need to use. For actually my very first sewn cosplay ever, I found a hoodie pattern and it fit well and I adapted it. And I've actually used probably the same back of a shirt pattern piece probably for the last, we're not going to use numbers, a lot of years. And it's, you know, the paper is very, very brown and I'm probably going to have to replace it at some point. But like, luckily it's been that one piece and I'm like, okay, if I build that, I can just kind of, tweak sleeves and things and figure it out. But then I've still probably got, 3 or 4 pages of sketches of individual pieces and kind of laid out flat and trying to figure out what an overall outfit actually is made of. Because there are a lot of layers and things to kind of figure out. And usually I'll do that, as soon as the exciting idea comes up to do something.
I'm just really fortunate to be doing an architecture degree, so I can deconstruct things pretty easily, so Swain was just the first go of me playing around sculpting. It's just, I think you learn with time more than anything. Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've only got a few minutes left, so we'll try to power through these ones.
More than
Cosplay is about looking the part, even if it's held together with hot glue for 48 hours. Is there anything in the community about actually recreating character outfits that would stand up to adventuring? So full-on recreation, not just the look of the thing.
I haven't personally made anything that would be kind of acrobatically sound, but you definitely, I've seen some fantastic Assassin's Creed cosplays where people have actually been doing parkour, so it is possible. I just haven't quite gotten there yet, but you do see some great ones.
There's a lot of people that do LARP as well that incorporate that into their costumes, and also the Replica Forum group on Facebook. I don't know if anyone here is a part of it, but they all make everything accurate to the movies, and it's a big thing that they do. There's definitely a big community involved in making things as accurate and maneuverable, I guess, as possible. Anyone else like to add?
Everything I make is basically in the hot glue gun category. But I think a bit of a call out, Piltover City Customs, another lead cosplayer who was on our panel last year, actually just, basically handmade chainmail, and, his stuff actually is incredibly solid. And so his probably is in that beautiful, can actually wear it more than once without it all just melting off your body kind of category.
Next.
Do you ever let your physical limitations stop you? Like, if you want to be a fat character but you're slender, or if you want to be a tall character and you're short, what do you do?
I want to be Urgot next year. Watch out for me, guys. No, I think it's just, see, I wanted to be a white guy, and look what happened. just putting it out there.
We made it 59 minutes before he finally said something.
No, it's just go for it. I think it's all about knowing your materialities and seeing what you do. Like, if I want to do Ogre, I would do a giant upholstery foam body frame and then work from there. It's just how you think about it.
But it's just what you're comfortable with. If you really love a character design, go for it. Not everyone obviously is going to fit the same shoe in terms of physical appearance, but if you just really connect to a character, go for it. It's not something, there are lines like I personally wouldn't darken my skin, for example. It depends on your own morals. But in terms of physical, weight, I think, if you like it, go for it.
In terms of making weapons, like what kind of stuff do you use to make the props, that kind of thing? Like,
Depends on the end goal. I'm really big into making things durable because I'm clumsy. So if I'm going to drop it, I know it will survive. If Randy's going to drop it, apparently it won't.
Okay, that's why I make everything out of foam.
Yeah, so there's lots of,
Survived.
it's like things like foam are really good, cheap starting places where you can get awesome results from. Whereas I'm like, I want this to have some heft to it to feel like that. So I go for more plastics and sculpting sort of things now with a lot of casting. It just depends on the context and what it's for. Because if I'm going to be carrying a giant sword around all day, then I'm going to be really, really, really grumpy if it's super heavy. So you've got the options to make things based on where you're going to take them to. So.
And in taking to, if you're going to travel it,
Yeah.
make sure that you can either pay for a large item to be taken over or how it's going to disassemble as well.
Be prepared for, the airports to break your stuff. So it's always a bit of a gamble.
I think maybe the big one that fits most of those, the plumbing section at Bunnings.
PVC
Because
pipes
you
as well.
can find pieces that screw together and unscrew, and they're light and they're solid, and that gives you a decent amount of durability in itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, sadly, we're all out of time, but all of these cosplayers are going to be hanging around the convention over the next few days, I think. And thank you all so much for coming, and hope you all have a great PAX.